Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting of the Carson City Board of Supervisors to order. Today is Thursday, December 3rd, 2015. Today is it's just 8:30 a.m. We're at the Community Center, Sierra Room, at 851 East William Street in our very own Carson City. Sue, could we have a roll call, please, for the record?
Good morning. Supervisor Aboud? Here. Supervisor Bonkowski? Here. Supervisor Bagwell? Here. Supervisor Shirk? Here. Mayor Kroll? Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Could we call on our good friend Bruce Henderson of the Airport Road Church of Christ to get us started? Good morning, Bruce.
Our Father in heaven, we've already begun singing Joy to the World, but it seems as though once again the world is attempting to steal our joy. With violence, with terrorism, with racism, with so many things, Lord. We would ask that the joy be able to be returned. We would ask a special blessing upon our leaders of our community as they make decisions this day. We would pray that once again we can sing Joy to the World. And we ask indeed that earth receive her King. In the name of our Lord, amen.
We'll have a moment of silence. I think you said it just right, Bruce. A moment of silence for the violence that's occurred since the last meeting, and particularly yesterday in San Bernardino. Thank you. Ronnie, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We're now going to take up item number 5, public comment. This is the time for anybody to comment on anything that's on any topic that's relevant to or within the authority of the Board of Supervisors. We also have public comment generally as we go through each item. I know Eric von Schimmelman has got some public comment to talk about launching a new program. So anybody else, any other public comment? Why don't you come on up first, and then we'll go, and then Eric will go. Come on. Good morning.
Just any of these microphones?
Yeah, just press the button on that. There you go. I'll turn.
Good morning. My name is Carla Navarro, and I'm here as part of the Division of Child and Family Services this morning. Hi. I just wanted to come speak to you about National Adoption Month. And I know I'm a few days late. National Adoption Month was November of this year, but I still wanted to bring awareness to the need of foster parents, and specifically those parents who have the desire to become adoptive parents in our rural communities. Like I said, November was National Adoption Awareness Month, and every year Nevada celebrates this month by honoring those families who open their hearts and their homes to ensure that our children in foster care find their forever families. This year, the focus was on the adoption of older youth in care, and the theme was "We never outgrow the need for family." We understand that adolescence is a time in life where supportive adults and caring role models are very important to these young men and women in foster care. Typically, older youth in foster care are considered harder to adopt, and they tend to wait the longest in care. In our rural communities, currently there are 461 children in foster care. Out of those 461, 135 of those children are ages 13 through 18. Last state fiscal year, we had 53 adoptions that were finalized for rural Nevada. And in this past month, in November, there were 10 adoptions that were finalized throughout rural Nevada.
So the number, Carla, 400 and some odd, that's of the 15, 14 rural counties? Who's counted in that?
Yes, the 15 rural counties.
Okay,
So it excludes Clark and Washoe.
okay.
So for DCFS, every month is actually National Adoption Month because we strive to find these forever families for our children. We believe that there is a family for every child in care. We just need to find that family. And lastly, for more information, if anyone wants to contact the division, they may call 888-423-2659. So thank you for the opportunity to
Want to give the
speak
number
today.
again?
It's 888-423-2659.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It's never too late. Don't worry about it being a month. Don't worry about it, okay?
Thank you.
It's a big issue. Thank you.
It is very important to us.
All right. All right. Any other public comments before I turn it over briefly here to the IT? Okay, Eric, you're on.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Eric von Schimmelman, CIO for the city. Here today to present our next release of our open government initiative here. Today at 8 a.m. we released our open data portal, which will now give us access to our open budget, open expenditures, and also a link to our Carson City Connect, so that the public can now see our budget in real time. It's updated weekly. So I was just going to give you a quick overview of what the site's going to look like. So on our homepage, we have a link to it. Here we have our spending, which is our open expenditures, and then our budget, which is the revenue. I can go into those. And want everybody to take a look at these, and hopefully the public will enjoy this. And if there's any questions or comments on that, please let me know. And we are continually updating these sites, modifying things, so you'll see this change quite often. I'm still working on many of the details on this, but everything's there. So this is the expenditure site. We can go through and look at what's been spent, and you can actually get into the city's checkbook through here. You can see through the departments, or look at our checkbook and see what checks have been written out on a weekly basis. So just wanted to announce that it was live for the public as of today. Through the expenditures, okay? So in our expenditures, we can look at like what Public Works is spending. We can go through, drill down into each individual fund through the Public Works Department, into sewer, what they've spent out of capital. And you can see all the way down to where it's been spent and who the money's been gone to. Okay. So, through our budget, we have our revenue budget and our expenditure budget. There's a difference between the two. It is the carryover funds from previous years. That's why the expenditures on this particular year are more. There's carryover from funds from last year that we're allocating out. So we can drill down into each of these. And see what funds they've gone into, where we've allocated. And if you highlight over, you can see what the year-to-date amount is opposed to the approved amount for the year.
And this is current?
This is
is
current.
real-time data, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, let's see what else is in here.
Go back to the meat transparency.
The transparency page. The actual page is opendata.carson.org, so you can get there direct.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to publicly thank the CIO and the CFO. They've done a lot of work
in bringing this project really in a very rapid amount of time. We're very soon going to have a new website, and I apologize in advance because it's a little clunky getting to things on our current website, but we will eventually have a transparency page that will give any resident the ability to look at our planned and our actual budget numbers and our expenditure numbers. We'll also have Carson City Connect, which you see up there. So it'll give kind of a one-stop shop page for people to be able to either, bring complaints, have questions, get things addressed in a rapid manner, and also see where all their tax dollars are going. So again, right now it's a little clunky. I apologize in advance for it. We're not going to put any money into rescuing this current web page, and we'll very soon have a current web page. It'll be much more easier to navigate. But again, I want to thank the CIO as well as the CFO for their work here.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. And
Can we ask a
this go live when?
Went live 8 a.m. this morning.
8 a.m. this morning?
Yep.
All right.
Can we ask a question?
Yeah,
Eric?
shoot, go, sorry.
Eric, on this website, I'm seeing hashtag Carson Proud. Are you working with them and overseeing them? And not currently? Okay.
Sorry, not correct.
When people log on to this, it's accessibility for any resident or any citizen or anybody in the world to access. They don't have to log in and name who they are, an email
Nope.
address or anything like that, right?
Nothing. It's completely
Okay.
open.
Is there any way that the icon where it says contact us, the new webpage, would that have a bigger icon?
Oh, the one up on the top
Yeah.
corner? Yeah.
will.
We're changing the whole
Okay.
website is being revamped right now. We're
Vast
designing.
improvement. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
Transparency, it's a good way to start the day. Okay. Any other public comment? If not, we're going to move on to item number 6, possible action for approval of the minutes of November 5th. Everybody had a chance to look at those minutes? Motion's in order.
I move to approve the minutes of November 5th, 2015 as presented.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Item 7, the adoption of the agenda. I've been told that item 14A will be pulled and heard in January. That's the appointment to the RT Regional Transportation Commission. Any other changes, City Manager?
No other changes
Board
besides that
members?
one.
Any other changes? Public? Unless there's an objection, then we will take the agenda as published with the exception of item 14A, which will be heard in January. Okay, now, I think Father Bruce said it right. We've had a lot of things happen, but now we're going to have some good, positive things. So let's move to special presentations. And Ronnie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can introduce Ava, and we'll have the entire board come down there, please. We'll wait for us to come down in there.
Okay. And then we'll get out, okay?
Let's come on, a little closer. Come on up here. We'll get right here. How's that? Ooh, right up next.
Oh, pressure, pressure. Instead of looking up, you're looking down at, well, you're still looking down at me. Good morning. I'm Ronnie Hanneman, Executive Director of the Carson City Chamber of Commerce. And as you all know, tomorrow night is our, oh my gosh, since 1988, I've just found out that it's actually over 100 years that we've had this tree lighting. And it'll take place at 5:30 tomorrow night. As part of our annual festival, one of the things that we have been doing is we have an art contest in the schools. And we had over 100 entries this year, which I'm pleased about. And the library teen leadership judges the winners. And we have 4 separate categories with first, second, and third place winners in each of the category. And then we have an overall winner. And the teens at the library were unanimous with our overall winner, and that is with Ava Covington, who is 12 years old, grade 8, and she goes to Carson Middle School. She's accompanied today by her parents, Mary and Aaron Covington, and as you have up on your podium, and also in yesterday's Nevada Appeal, which we thank them for their cooperation, the cover of the Silver and Snowflakes insert was Ava's art. So, Ava, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, and I hope you all have a very happy and Merry Christmas.
And you have a present for each one.
Wait a minute. We'll do this one first. Before you hand out your presents, we're going to hand out something to you. And we're all down here crowding around because we want you to feel the warmth of an entire community. And that's what we represent here, the entire community. So, Ava, I've known you since, I don't know, I've known your mother probably, and father, they're my neighbors. It's just a wonderful art that you've done, and we're terribly proud of you in your community. So on behalf of all of us crowding around here with you, we have a little something for you. And this is called a Certificate of Recognition to Ava Covington, this year's Silver and Snowflakes Festival of Lights Holiday Contest winner. Santa Claus is coming to town from the Board of Supervisors. So here, come on. All right. Now, we're going to do a picture. We'll get in here. Come on. Yeah. Mom and Dad, you want to? We'll do one here without, and then we'll do one with Mom and Dad.
Get a little closer, like you like each other here.
All right. Aaron and Mary, come on up. Here, Mary. You want to get in? One more. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now she's got something. I think you have something for us, right? Yep, we can't forget that. I mean, this is Christmas.
And unfortunately, you guys are going to be sparkles all day.
That's all right.
I could use a little.
Yeah, me.
Doesn't hurt, right?
All right.
Sparkle all day, never hurt anybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ava.
Thank you.
All right. Before Aaron Covington leaves, everybody should know this gentleman runs the Nevada Terawatt facility at the University of Nevada, Reno. And if anybody in the room knows what the Terawatt facility does, raise your hand. We'll tell you later. Thanks, Aaron. Bye. All right. Now let's go on to item number 9. This is on second reading for the addition of a fee for non-emergency basic life support. Any changes since the first reading?
No, sir.
Any feedback?
No.
Board, questions?
Ordinance number?
2015-11.
Public, anybody? No? All right, motion's in order.
I move to approve Bill number 112 on second reading, ordinance number 2015-11, an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code Title V, Public Utility Franchises and Requirements at Chapter 5.18.040, Fees and Rates. The amendment adds a fee for non-emergency basic life support ambulance service at a base rate of $295 per transfer.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks, Chief. All right, well done. All right, anybody want to talk with Nancy about the condition of the Treasury? Anybody? Public, anybody? Motion's in order.
I'll make it. I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statements of receipts and expenditures through November 23, 2015, per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Second.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, let's move. Thank you, Nancy. Let's move to number 11. Item 11, this is, and this is a heck of a word, cationic flocculent. That doesn't.
Chemicals.
You know, when I read that, chemical, it doesn't sound too good.
We're going to have David Burketta pronounce it, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds like what you get when you
I
drink a
think
lot
he
of
also
milk.
knows the chemical composition of that as well.
All right. All right, tell us about what's going on.
Good morning, Laura Tadman, Purchasing. This is to approve contract 1516-080 for the purchase of cationic flocculent chemical from Solinus through joinder contract 156067 with the City of Salem, Oregon for a not-to-exceed amount of $70,000 for fiscal year 15-16 and $120,000 for each fiscal year 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20, subject to the joinder contract being renewed annually. Funding will come from the chemical supplies account, which has a current budget of $202,173.
One of the questions of Laura, you want to hear from David, too.
It's probably David.
Look, David, why don't you tell us what it's all about, what we're doing here? I know we got the numbers from Laura, and then you tell us. Okay.
Good morning, David Burketta, Public Works. So what this for is this is a chemical we have to add to the process to separate the solids from the liquids. So it's a required chemical. We've been using it for years and years. It's a sole source contract. We shop around for the best value that we can get for this, and we currently found a place up in Oregon that's using the same chemical. And the price is reduced about 10% compared to the previous years. So we found this to be a good value, and then every year they have the option to renew it. Salem has the option to renew this contract, which means we would be a joinder with them having the option to renew. So I think it's a good value to Carson City.
We've got some questions up here. Supervisor Bonkowski, then Supervisor Shirk.
David, the first year of the contract is for $70,000. The remaining years are $120,000. I assume that's because the first years are prorated.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It is. Starts in December of this year, so it would be a prorated amount.
Thank you.
Very good.
No, give us a different answer.
That would be a good one. Okay. Any other questions of the board? Public comment? Seeing none, motion's in order.
I move to approve contract 1516-080, the purchase of cationic flocculent from Solinus LLC through joiner contract 156067 with the City of Salem, Oregon, for a not-to-exceed amount of $70,000 for fiscal year 15-16 and $120,000 for each fiscal year 16-17, 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20, subject to the joiner contract being renewed by City of Salem on or before June 30th of each year.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, David. All right. Let's take up Parks and Rec. These are suggested changes to the municipal code dealing with the Parks and Rec organization. Morning, Mr. Mollendorf. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know I've met everybody before, but for the record, I'm Iris Yao with the DA's office here.
It's Iris, right?
Iris.
I got you, Iris. Okay.
So we can do this. I'd like to do this however you all want to do it, but I'm prepared to either answer questions based on the material that was submitted, or I can go through the changes as they're laid out.
Why don't you give us an overview of what we're doing here, what you're trying to do, and then kind of just a thumbnail of the changes.
Perfect.
I think we've all had a chance to look at the changes, but Okay?
Perfect.
All right, Iris.
So these are proposed changes to Carson City Municipal Code 2.16. It's Parks and Recreation, as you had stated before. The first change that I'd like to go over is 2.16010, Section 2. The number of members is being suggested to change to 7 members. Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why was it ever 9?
Oh. That's a good question. I think in the original ordinance that set up the Park and Recreation Commission, it stipulated 9 members. I think it was a carryover from that point.
Okay.
This is the only commission that the Park and Recreation Department works with that has 9 members, and it requires a special setup for the room that is kind of time-consuming and a little awkward. If we reduce back to 7 members like all the other committees, then we can meet just as you folks meet up here, and it doesn't require a special setup.
How are you going to make the reductions?
Well, we're looking at making the reductions through attrition. When we have several positions coming up, I think 3 or 4 coming up in January for possible renewal, reappointment, and it would be up to the board then to pare that down to 7 rather than select 9.
And I just want to make a point here that on a lot of our other committees, when we do the committee interviews for applicants, we, meaning the members of the board here, in a lot of circumstances, we may have 3 or 4 very qualified applicants for a single position. And we have talked in the past of increasing the number of people that sit on the committees. So I think that we need to take note of what the action that we're taking right now, so that the next time we think about adding people to the committees, that we kind of check ourselves. There's a reason why the committees are the number that they are.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one that's being proposed to be changed is 2.16030, term of office, subsection 1. The last portion of the sentence would be stricken to change the sentence to all terms will be for 4 years. There was previously a student member, and now there's not. Any questions? No? Okay. On the next page, 2.16040. In here, there's a few more changes. The main thing is changing the meeting from every month to every other month. Now, we did use the term bi-monthly, and we looked up the definition, and it could have been twice a month or every other month, and we thought by specifying the months, it would be clear that it was every other month. On the DA's suggested changes, we wanted unless notice is otherwise provided on subsection 5 to make sure that everybody was in compliance in case something changed. And number 6 is being able to cancel a meeting or schedule a special meeting. Questions? No?
I do have a question on that. What if the chair and the director don't agree on canceling a meeting or scheduling a new meeting? So say you have the chair that has an issue that's very important to them in the committee and the director disagrees. How do they mediate that disagreement?
That is a good question, and one that Roger will probably be better equipped to answer.
Well, maybe and maybe not. We've never ran into that kind of a situation before, Supervisor Brankowski. I would assume, and again, I guess I'm speaking more from, my personal style as a director, if the chair felt strongly that we need to have a meeting, I would agree to that. But, looking into the future to other directors, possible directors maybe in the seat, we really don't have any type of a system that would reconcile that difference, and I'm not sure how we'd handle that. It's a good question.
I can tell you, when I reviewed the video of the November 4th meeting, there was discussion about holding a spot for each month if another meeting was necessary. So I think having that spot there would probably solve some of the dispute if there were one.
Okay, and I would assume the way that this is, the way it's written, the way it's proposed to be accepted today, if there was a disagreement, then if the chair wanted to have a meeting and the director disagreed, or vice versa, that there would not be a meeting, because it says here that they would have to decide together.
That is true, and you also...
We're calling it a special meeting, not the regular scheduled meeting.
And also the commission can't have a meeting without a representative of the Parks and Recreation Department in attendance.
Then the last suggested change is 2.16045, subsections 2 and 3. It's not a substantive change, it's just a grammatical change to make it consistent.
Can you tell us how you're going to describe non-participation?
Can you please
Item
rephrase the
2.
question?
On that page, it says, can be removed for non-participation.
Well, the way that I saw it is that you're removing somebody for something that they've done. So if you're looking at someone's conduct throughout a meeting, you're going to be using past tense.
I'm just reading this. It says, a board may remove for cause of any commissioner for non-participation. So what is non-participation of a board member? How would that be defined?
I believe that's defined in the bylaws, Supervisor Shirk. I think in the bylaws, we don't have a copy with us, I think the bylaws stipulates that the commissioner needs to attend a certain percentage of the meetings, and I can't remember if that's 50% or 75%, but I believe that's in the bylaws. We can check on that for you, though.
That's item 3. That says non-attendance. I got that.
Oh, okay. Oh, non-participation. In other words, are they there, but they're not participating?
That's what I would attribute it to, but it's not a substantive change. It's already in there as non-participating, so we're just changing the ending to be grammatically correct. But I can definitely look into a definition and suggest one if you'd like.
I think it should just be deleted.
Well, if I could just speak up here, usually with other bodies, the non-participation usually deals with abstention. So if somebody has a history of abstaining at every single meeting or for many items, then that could also be a reason for removal.
Okay. Thank you. Good question.
So I said that was the last one, but actually I was wrong. The last one is under duties and responsibilities, 2.16050. Section 3D is being proposed to be removed as the Fair and Recreation Board no longer exists, and every other change is just to make it conform grammatically. Any questions?
Any questions? Iris or Mr. Mollendorf? Public comment? Anybody? Seems pretty straightforward stuff. Go.
I move to introduce on first reading revisions to the Carson City Municipal Code, Chapter 2.16, Parks and Recreation Commission Ordinance, in Section 2.16.1010, Organization, Section 2.16.030, Term of Office, Section 2.16.040, Meetings and Officers, Legislative Procedure, Removal of Commissioners, No Compensation, and Section 2.161050, Duties and Responsibilities.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion.
Excuse me, the bill number is 113.
Is that what we got there?
I amend my motion to read, I move to introduce on first reading bill number 112?
113.
113.
And I continue my second.
At all.
All right, on the motion, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried unanimous. Okay, thank you. On first reading, all right, we'll see that again on second reading. All right, let's take up the potential abandonment of the right-of-way from the application of the Bethlehem Lutheran School. We've seen this, kind of the mechanics of this, so anybody want to tell us what's going on here? Oh, you are.
I am.
Hi, Ms. Dorpansky, go.
Good morning, Susan Pansky for the record. So, as the mayor had alluded to, this application in its special use permit form was in front of the board on appeal in the last couple of months related to the movement of the playground and sports courts on the property. We're now talking about the abandonment. It did go to Planning Commission and was approved and is now in front of you to be approved as well. So if you recall, the project site is located on Mountain Street, and then also a portion is on Ivy Street. And the aerial that I have up on the screen shows where the current public right-of-way goes into the project site, or the applicant's site. A condition of approval of the special use permit was that the applicant be required to abandon that public right-of-way because the city has no use for it. That was discussed at the Planning Commission as well as at the board level on the appeal. It came back to the Planning Commission last month in November and was approved again, as I mentioned, by the Planning Commission. The two appellants were notified of this abandonment, as was discussed at the board level at that time on the appeal, and both were present at the meeting. Mr. Fazer felt that his concerns had been addressed with the engineering conditions of approval that have been placed on this, and Ms. Nicholas was still concerned more about the location of the sports courts, which was really not related to the abandonment application itself. So what is being proposed is an abandonment of an area that's approximately 8,500 square feet. It goes on the north side to the very southerly edge of the driveway of the parsonage, as you can see on the left. Mr. Fazer's property is here. Ms. Nicholas's property is here. The reason why staff and the applicant agreed wanted the abandonment just to go to this area is to maintain the access for the parsonage driveway, and also to ensure that the driveways of the two other adjacent property owners would not be impeded by private property. So we are recommending approval. The applicant is here. I'll note the conditions as they relate to drainage that were discussed as a part of the appeal. These were placed on the application by engineering. Prior to the recordation of the abandonment, the owner must extend the eastern curb and gutter or install a valley gutter to the abandoned area to assist in proper drainage. That would be in this location here. As a part of the drainage improvements, prior to the recordation of the abandonment, the owner must grade the unpaved area in and around the abandoned area so that it will drain properly. If you'll recall, and it's not shown because it's covered here, this area here is unpaved, so they would need to address that. And then finally, as a part of the drainage improvements, the owner must submit a conceptual drainage study which evaluates the current and proposed future state, including off-site flows. So the drainage study would support whatever drainage improvements are being proposed for that area. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
We have some. Supervisor Bonkowski.
I just have one question. There's a note in our package that the city acquired this on parcel map 1055, and they did not pay for the land. Therefore, we do not have the ability to charge for it as part of this abandonment, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Two questions. Are they going to pave any of that or just grade the area? Would that be permanently paved?
I don't believe that it will be paved under the special use permit. I believe that a fence will go at approximately the north edge of where it's being proposed, and that will become a part of their private play area. One thing I will note is that there is a fire access that's required. I don't believe that that's going to be paved, and the applicant can probably address it, but it does have to be an appropriate surface that's accepted by the fire department.
I can't recall, but is there a sign over there that says not a through street or a dead end or anything like that at the beginning of is there? I can't remember.
I'm not certain, but it looks like other board members say that there is.
Then we'll go with that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion.
Wait a minute. Public comment? Hearing none, motion's in order.
I move to approve an abandonment of public right-of-way application to abandon 8,570 square feet
of public right-of-way at the terminus of Ivy Street, adjacent to APN 001-111-33, based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report, and authorize the mayor to sign the order of abandonment.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, let's now move to 13B. Who's doing this one? Susan, you're
I'm
doing
doing this one too, and if I could request that we hear 13B, C, and D together. They're all related to the same parcels, but then vote on them separately.
We'll take up seriatim motions.
Perfect. Okay, so this is a request to approve 2 master plan amendments and introduce on first reading an ordinance to change some zoning for parcels that Carson City has recently acquired through the the Parks and Recreation or open space programs. The first parcel is a small area on the east side of I-580. This is about 28,000 square feet. This parcel is currently zoned, I believe it's agriculture. It's being proposed to go to public community. The master plan is mixed-use employment, and it's proposed to be Parks and Recreation. This parcel was recently acquired by Parks and Recreation to connect to existing pathways that exist both on the north side and the south side. So that's the first one. Just a couple of slides that show the zoning currently in the master plan. The second 2 parcels, the first on the west side is 19 acres. The second is 1.83 acres on either side of South Ormsby Boulevard. This is south of Kings Canyon Road and King Street. You can see Carson Middle School up in the upper right-hand corner. These parcels were also recently acquired by Carson City for purposes of open space. They're proposed to be changed from low-density residential and medium-density residential in the master plan to open space, and from single-family 2-acre and single-family 6,000 to public community. And both of these will be used to continue the open space program. And I just have a couple of other slides that just back up the first slide that I had. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Roger Mollendorf is here to discuss this item as well for Parks.
Jim, are you up? Yeah. Go. Go.
With the acquisition of this extra acreage, would this call for hiring of any extra personnel, or is it we're comfortable with the staff we have to maintain this in good shape?
No, all this property has been acquired some time ago. The first property, the Riz property, or however you pronounce it, was acquired, I think, in 2014. And the second parcel or property that was referred to is the Potter property that was acquired, I think, in 2013. So the property's been under our ownership for a couple of years. So we've been managing it with our existing staff.
And so there's a trailhead basically for to get to the top of Sea Hill on the Potter property, right?
That is correct. Very popular trailhead.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Any other board questions? Public comment? Seeing none, are we ready for a motion? Motion in order. Go.
I move to approve a master.
I better
I'm doing the first one.
Yeah, let's do 13B first.
Okay.
Thanks. Sorry.
I move to approve a master plan amendment application to change the land use designation from medium-density residential and low-density residential to open space on property located at 501 and 502 South Ormsby Boulevard, APN 003-15125 and 009-01405, based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Second. Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Let's take up 13C.
I move to approve a master plan amendment application to change the land use designation from mixed-use employment to Parks and Recreation on property located east of Interstate 580 between East 5th Street and North Lampa Lane, APN 010-04174, based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Motion by Supervisor Bankowski, second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Let's do 13 Delta.
Bill number 2.
114.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 114, an ordinance to change the zoning from agriculture to public community on property located east of Interstate 580 between East 5th Street and North Wampa Lane, APN 010-04174, and to change the zoning from single-family 6,000 and single-family 2-acre to public community on property located at 501 and 502 South Ormsby Boulevard, APN 003-15125 and 009-01405, based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Motion by Supervisor Bienkowski, second by Supervisor Abel on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, are we ready to take up 13E, the Master Plan Annual Report? Are you ready?
Ready, Mayor.
Okay.
Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. I'll be giving this presentation before taking questions. And if you have any questions as I go through a few slides here, feel free to interrupt me, and we can do it that way as I kind of present some information. So this item is brought to you annually, and it's brought to you annually because the state law NRS says that the Planning Commission shall annually make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We do that through this annual report and update on master plan implementation activities and looking at other master plan action items and related matters. You have the report attached. Included with this is what is called an annual action plan. It was adopted as, the master plan was adopted in 2006. This is the master plan. It's a document. It's a general policy document. It goes along with a land use map, and all of these policies and the map are implemented through ordinances and zoning. There's an action plan that was adopted with it that set some priorities at the time in 2006, some activities, and then at the direction of the Board of Supervisors at that time and over the years, the city takes up these activities to implement the master plan. As identified in there, there's a lot of ongoing activities that the city does and various departments do that are in compliance with our master plan, and our master plan policies, as we've kind of looked at this over the last couple of years, are consistent with the goals, strategic plan goals and objectives of the Board of Supervisors, and maybe in the future we can start linking those a little bit more. I think we will start linking those a little bit more too as regards to our implementation activities. So in my presentation, I'm really focused on what the planning division does. You know, like I said, I send this out, I get some feedback, and we fill in kind of little highlights of what other departments are doing. But kind of like these initiatives that I point out to the Planning Commission and then to you are really just kind of what Planning Commission was involved in and only specifically related to the Master Plan Action Plan. Last year, the two initiatives that we came away with were to develop the capital improvements plans for downtown. As you know, that's in progress. And secondly, to explore opportunities to establish the Business Improvement District, which is now called the Neighborhood Improvement District, to go along with that. And of course, that's also in progress and continuing. I'd just like to take this opportunity. During this presentation, you have a lot of this information in your packet, but just to kind of go through it and talk about it a little bit, just talk about some of these graphics. So the master plan was adopted with a city build out in mind of approximately 75,000 to 80,000 people. As we go through growth management and this master plan amendment each year, and we get updated statistics from the demographer, we kind of project out to roughly that build out population for the purposes of water planning, sewer planning, transportation planning. So we all coordinate with that and kind of look at recent trends. If you look at that, kind of that black line on there is the demographer's latest population projection. The previous population projection we got was 2 years prior to that, and it was flat for 15 years, so it really ranges. And I think if we have a suggested or estimated line of growth out to a build-out population in Carson City that goes out to about 2060. So, we're still talking 50 years from now, but we have a long planning time to get to build out. But you could kind of look at that line more as a hurricane track, that it may be a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, but we have to make some estimates. And it does appear that it's still a number of years out there. So, yeah, that's any questions on that. Some other information in there regarding construction. So the next two slides are about construction and building, with the first one being about residential. We all know what happened after 2006, and things have been flat for the last 8-9 years. However, as later slide will indicate, we are starting to get the application activity start to pick up again. That would indicate that residential in particular could very well start picking up next year. We have Schultz Ranch that has recorded lots, and they're grading away at the infrastructure now to be set up for next year, and we've had some other applications coming through. And then general overall building activity can be measured a little by permit valuations, so, and it's categorized a little bit within there. But again, you know, we're on track this year. This is through October, which is about a third of the year. We're about on track or a little bit ahead of prior fiscal years, but not exploding yet. And again, maybe with some entitlement, some of the zoning entitlements coming through, we see that kind of starting to pick up a little bit as well.
Lee, can you go back one slide, please?
Go back one, sure.
Building permits by type. I assume that the permit counts per number of residential units. So if you look at multifamily, if you build a 40-unit apartment complex, that counts as 40 on this?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's
residential units, it's a units. And actually what this is from actually the growth management. So this is growth management entitlements, because any time somebody comes in for any residential unit, it requires a growth management allocation. So yes, each individual apartment in an apartment complex is counted as one in this graph.
Okay, so it's not total number of permits, it's total number of units to be built under those permits?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point for the title, to clarify that, yeah.
Lee, with regards to the Lampa property, any indication on how much residential will go in that?
You know, if I have, we're getting applications, we're in conversations with interested parties coming in. That property's for sale. We have, and actually, do we have a complete application submitted on that, on Lampa?
No, actually, they submitted last month, but we deemed it incomplete. They have some outstanding engineering items they need to address, but they're planning to resubmit in January for the February Planning Commission.
And with that, there will be some kind of high and low. It's going to be establishing the new specific plan for the area, which will allocate densities, but it's not going to be full entitlement. So there'll be a range of densities that we'll have information for soon. Yeah. Okay. I think I covered this again on that. This is overall including commercial levels of construction. And then, so as I said, this is the entitlement process. These are planning applications submitted, with the darker lower half there being the ones going to the Planning Commission, which, again, they're still lower than they have been in the past down there, but are picking up, and it's those new entitlements that may be leading to some new construction in the next year or two, particularly in residential growth. You know, another thing I'd like to note on this slide is looking at the overall volume of planning applications. Is kind of part of this is looking at the workload versus our ability to take on new special projects. So looking back to 2001, and as it was going up there, planning department was twice as big as it is now, and we're kind of at this point approaching. This is through October. We're approaching those 2001, 2002 levels of application volume, but with still the same amount of staff, which limits. And I know all city departments are in the same position, but it does limit our ability to take on multiple additional special projects. And then, I don't know how much to say about this graph, but I think it is interesting. It's the total assessed valuation by year, starting back in 1991 through the present. We had a very linear growth for a long time before the bubble, and then the recession, and I think that's pretty well represented in this assessed valuation, although this is a lagging indicator because assessed valuation is always looking out ahead.
Lee, it's an interesting graph if you look through 2006. Do you happen to know what that percentage of growth is?
No.
On the first part? The part?
Without going back and looking at the
It'd be interesting
graph.
to know what that number is, because I think that we could use that number for our growth projections going forward based on historic values, and I think that it's eventually going to get back up to that average. So it'd just be nice to know that number.
Yeah, and I'm sure the finance department, working with Dave Dolly, look at that, and we could see more recently we're starting to trend back up towards that line. And so finally, again, for the just the planning department, and again, this is not a complete planning department work plan. This is not a complete work plan for all other departments, but the planning strategies I wanted to highlight that is recommended for 2016 relate actually to the same ones of the capital improvements. It's within those same action implementation strategies of the CIP improvements and Business Improvement District, is to develop a short and long-term parking strategies to accommodate future downtown development, is what that should say, and including the implementation of a parking fee in lieu program to accommodate redevelopment within the downtown. And then secondly, to continue to work with the property owners and businesses downtown to establish marketing and event coordination in anticipation of completion of the improvements. And I think that's my last slide on this, yeah. And I think I'll conclude with that and be available. Oh, and no, I do want to mention, and the Planning Commission, again, and we kind of have this discussion a little bit, is looking at, so where are we in the master plan? Are there any major issues that we need to address in the master plan? And I should have put it up here, because one of the recommendations and discussions is specifically that from the Planning Commission is that the master plan overall is still valid, and there's not a need at this time to do a complete evaluation and overhaul of the master plan. So with that, I'll conclude and take questions.
Lee, on page 5 of the report, you talk about Assembly Bill 239 and the need to adopt an above-ground utility plan. Can you tell me just a little bit about what that actually is? What is a plan? We have above-ground utilities. What are they looking for us to actually do?
Yeah, it's very specific to creating large power corridors. So it's not the little transmission. It's not the little, I don't know if the distribution lines, I don't know the right term. It's not the little distribution lines. It's about very large capacity across state type transmission lines and providing for corridors for those. It also requires coordination with surrounding counties. Our surrounding counties haven't done it yet. Douglas County, Lyon County, Story County. It's a pretty controversial issue. I guess that's what we've had this come up in the past with some proposed corridors along the west side, and it's either in our open space, it's either next to somebody's house or next to somebody's house, and either way there's a lot of controversy that goes along with them. But again, that's one of those big projects that we haven't got to yet.
So is that the legislature was indicating they wanted the counties to work together to create so they
Yes.
want us to add transmission lines?
Yes, there's some other specific requirements in the bill of what's required, but yes, they're directing us to do that.
Lee, on page 4, when it talks about develop short-term and long-term parking strategies, this is pretty much already, I would say, done because of the completion of the downtown corridor projects. Drawings have been 90% completed. So this, in effect, are we still looking for other parking, or is this pretty much a done deal?
So I think long-term, the downtown's not built out. There's, we've seen some projects that potentially have coming in that can bring their own parking and develop their parking. But what we really haven't taken the next step to is what does that build out do to the rest of the downtown? How does it affect parking? And it doesn't account for redevelopment of other buildings within the downtown. For example, we have a lot of buildings in the downtown that are property line to property line. That's great, but they don't have the ability to expand and build new parking on their site. So that's the purpose of the fee in lieu program, is to establish something. Well, we want the downtown to grow, and we want to have the parking to accommodate that. But where does that parking go if it can't go on the site? So it's kind of those discussions that we need to figure out and establish what that appropriate fee would be, and then what that money's used for to provide that, to meet that future demand.
On page 5, it said, with the completion of Carson Street improvements in 2016, the establishment of the Neighborhood Improvement District, the next step will be to attract new businesses, which I understand. But the events, shouldn't that be something like the Visitors Bureau or the Chamber would do, attracting events rather than the city attracting events?
Michael Saloga's been with the Office of Business, or with the executive offices, has been working with on that kind of what's the next steps after downtown, and I'm not sure in the end what the city's role is versus outside, but maybe Michael can elaborate a little bit.
For the record, Michael Saloga, Business Development Manager. Part of what we have seen, and the thing that we're anticipating here, is that once all the construction is done, from the downtown's perspective, there are going to be two big questions that are going to be coming up. One is retail, and the other is event management. Big part of the event management side, I have been having individual conversations with a number of folks around town, and we're trying to figure out what's going to be the best way to do that, whether that is a third-party 501c3 type of an organization that is responsible for managing all the events and is essentially contracted by an organization. We've talked about VCB, we've talked about parks, but the idea right now is just to kind of circle the wagons here, start having these conversations, and then probably first quarter of next year bring everybody together and come up with a solution.
Thank you. I got some other questions, but I'm going to read them first.
Michael, maybe you should stay there. My question is, in order of priority, listed as number 2, is seeking out retail. I'm wondering if that priority shouldn't be moved up in terms of priority, and where are we going with that?
Okay, so from the retail perspective, part of one of the numbers of different conferences that I attended between September and October was the ICMA conference in Seattle. And so part of that was having a conversation with a company called Buxton. For those of you that are familiar with them, they essentially collect about 80% of all of the credit card transaction data across the country. So what they did is they did for us a free leakage surplus study. And so I've distributed that to Ronnie. Ronnie wrote about that in her chamber, I think it was a couple weeks ago in the Sunday paper. And that report does give us a breakdown by different categories in the retail sector. Overall, we're doing very well, actually. There's very few retail areas where there is significant leakage. Furniture is one of them, family clothing is another. And she addressed that actually in her article about going out and doing some actual shopping from that standpoint. So from that standpoint, we also do need to have the conversations in general. What do we want in our downtown? Okay, do we want it to be more of a boutique style, mom and pop, individual ownership type of situation, or do we want to have the national type chains that are coming involved? Now, the Buxtons of the world, they work with municipalities and they work with the national chains. They provide the same data to both of them, but they don't provide that matchmaking situation. They basically let you do your own strategy on your own. So are we working towards that? Again, we probably need to start having some meetings about that so we start to spread the word so that everybody can do the proper recruiting, because it's not just one organization, it's not just the city that's doing this. This is something that is going to be a community effort.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The other question is for Lee. Lee, with regards to the parking in lieu program, is that something that you are going to take to the Neighborhood Improvement District and be part of their discussion as well?
Yeah, sure, with the parking in lieu. So that'll be working, I'll be working closely, I should have mentioned, with Public Works certainly on that, and others, and Michael. I think we need to discuss some strategies. I don't think it starts with the Neighborhood Improvement District. It does start with the city and us doing research and what other cities are doing and how it works. But how it relates to parking management and parking strategies, I think we still need to go back and have that conversation with the downtown businesses. Yeah.
Danny and Roger, you should probably come up too. First, Michael, a third-party 503C, if we were to go that route, you anticipate they would then coordinate with Public Works to do the event management? Or are you thinking that the city would go out and buy additional equipment and store it, or the 503C would buy it and manage it? Because the biggest, I think, issue that we're dealing with right now is between the event planners and Public Works in trying to coordinate how we provide staff to get our equipment down there to manage the event. So what is your thinking there? Or Roger, you can jump in too if you want to.
Yeah, at this point, through conversations with Darren and Roger, more than likely, most of the equipment there is still city-owned equipment, so Public Works employees are going to have to be out there pre-event and post-event from that standpoint. So we don't see anything like that changing at this point. The actual operations that the event, management folks would be doing would be coordination issues. They're also going to be collecting some monies potentially. They may look at different revenue sources to actually provide support for their operations. So it's really for them, it's all about getting all the right parties together to actually make for a successful event.
So is part of that conversation going to be how we can create efficiencies between the city and the event planners? Because right now we get a lot of feedback that it's very difficult because of the permitting involved and the coordination with Public Works and Parks and trying to get staff and equipment back and forth. So do you think that there's room for efficiencies in there?
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the things that we're going to have to look at from the city's operations perspective. Do we need a single point of contact internally that can help walk things through as well? So we're in the process of having some of those conversations. Again, this is the time to do it now while, so that way when Carson Street is done, then we're actually ready to have all that in place.
Okay, you also mentioned a leakage study, but my definition of a leakage study is determining the amount of revenue that is leaving your jurisdiction and being spent in another jurisdiction. But what I was getting from the information that they gave you was that it was more of a gap study. So is it a leakage study or a gap study? Are they trying to determine which businesses we have a shortage of and would be successful in our area or that there's demand for? Or is it a leakage study trying to determine how much revenue we're losing? Or is it a combination of both?
It's really a combination of both. It's really looking at leakage and surplus. So for instance, an example of the surplus side of things, when you look at the automotive part of retail and what we have, for every dollar that someone in Carson City spends on a vehicle, there's $4 that are coming from outside the area. So from that standpoint, it's like we want to obviously keep that rolling because of the sales tax implications of that. On the leakage side of it, they are giving us that kind of data that says in the case of furniture, there's 25% of local Carson City dollars are being spent here in Carson City on furniture, where the other 75 cents of that is going somewhere else.
Well, I think that it's important to understand both, because there's a certain percent of leakage that we will never prevent because we don't have the demographics and the population and the income levels to attract those kinds of retailers. So although it's important to understand the leakage, I think what's more critical is the gap study, so that we're going out and spending our time trying to attract the businesses that our citizens will actually shop at. So anyway, it's good to know that you're actually getting that information. Then on page 19, this is for Lee. You're talking about continuing to implement mixed-use development using the adopted mixed-use evaluation criteria, additional mixed-use zoning districts. You and I kind of talked about this. You don't have the staff to take this on right now, but in the very near future, not only is there a need for us to go through all of our zoning codes and allowable uses, but we're also in a window of opportunity for probably the next decade where we should probably be working on this. So what are your thoughts about how, given your limited staff, how we not only allow you to work on your recommendations of the items that you can actually handle and deal with the other things that we should be doing concurrently so that we don't miss this window of opportunity? And I'm not going to hold you to any of this. I just want to really know what your thoughts are. I mean, where are we headed as a city?
Yeah, I would say that as we haven't had much development, there hasn't been a push that this hasn't risen to the top because we haven't seen the development that's been contradictory to anything we've wanted to do in the master plan. So without the development. But now as we start to see it up and we start to see some of these areas that are designated as mixed use in the master plan develop, it does become more important, if that's the direction we want to go, is to have a different form of development for these areas to reevaluate this and how we implement this. And I think, you know, in these mixed use things, I think we can write stuff and pull it from other things, but it would be a pretty big public involvement process, and would typically get help from those that are experts in the area of implementing mixed use zoning.
So is there a better way to get there, or are we looking at a task that we need to accomplish and we need to provide the resources to accomplish it?
I think it's going to be a task that we need to provide the resources to accomplish.
Okay. And work with downtown property owners and businesses, this is also on page 19, to implement a neighborhood improvement district and facade improvement program and design standards. That's going to fall under this. I saw it's also on 6.1D on page 21. You're having those conversations now about design standards and facade improvements.
Yeah, just an update on that. We will, based on recent redevelopment authority action, we will be bringing a proposed downtown facade improvement program to the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee in February to start those discussions, and along with that will be the discussion about the design standards that need to go along with those improvements.
Okay, next one is y'all get to jump in on Wi-Fi, providing Wi-Fi in the city, and I think there's a general consensus that it would be good if we could provide a Wi-Fi umbrella for the entire city. I don't know that that's feasible for us to do, but I think my feeling is that every time we have a capital project that the city is behind, that we should be looking at providing Wi-Fi for that project. And I've talked to all of you about this. Where are we at? How can we accomplish that? Can we accomplish that? And what is it going to cost in terms of resources, money, time, staff?
Yeah, I think I can answer that question, Supervisor. Eric von Schimmelman, the CIO, isn't here, but I've given him that task, and I laid out for him some broad guidance. When I was down at Camp Pendleton, I was able to bring in an outside vendor who provided a tiered level of Wi-Fi service, the basic level that would give you access to Facebook, that would give you the ability to check email, do basic web surfing was free. As you got into things like, live video streaming and other more bandwidth intensive applications, those tiered levels were paid for. So I think if we go down that route, I'd be very comfortable, and I think you would as well, because the city would not be responsible for the capital costs of installing the equipment. We would not be responsible for the ongoing maintenance costs of maintaining the equipment, as well as service outages and things like that. It's common in places like airports where you'll go in and you'll have a basic level of Wi-Fi that's free, but if you want to do anything more bandwidth intensive, then you need to pay for that. That was the direction that I gave the CIO to go down. I also told him I want him, at least initially, to concentrate on 3rd Street. I think that would, to be able to, have a little pilot program, so to speak, on 3rd Street where we could provide that dedicated Wi-Fi hotspot, I think would be easily achievable. So that's the direction we're going to go, barring any additional direction from this body. And I think it's something that would also be sustainable in terms of cost in the future.
Thank you. I think it's really important, if we want to continue to move the city forward, that we look at trying to catch up, because that's one area where we're seriously lacking. And I could go further into providing additional broadband for the industrial areas, which I mentioned before. So if we can piggyback, and that's a different story, because that we would be responsible for, I think, the infrastructure, but that's something else that I think we need to make a priority. David, my next question is for you and Danny. Capital improvement plans for the wastewater treatment center. We spent a lot of time on this with the rate schedules and looking at repairs and replacements going out into the future. My understanding is that is just one component of a 3-layered master plan for that infrastructure. So can you kind of walk us through what we've done, where we're at, and what we still need to do? Because I didn't even have a good understanding of it, so I'm pretty sure that most people don't.
So in one of the responses there, we said a comprehensive wastewater plan is going to be included through 2016 and through 2019. And a comprehensive wastewater plan includes those 3 legs: collections, which is the pipes to get it to the treatment facility itself, and then reuse, the pipes and pumps and ARVs and air release valves to get that water where it needs to go to be reused. The capital improvement plan for the treatment plan, the first section was a condition assessment done by Carollo in 2012, and that's the first phase of the treatment portion. So right now, in the next couple of years, we're going to be focusing on the collections and the reuse portions. Those both had previous studies and reports done, but this will be an update to bring those forward. And then after the current project at the treatment plant is complete, the next phase of the treatment master plan will look 5 to 20 years into the future. One other thing I'll mention, this was kind of more related to wastewater, but also we had a water master plan done in 2009. And if you remember, we came a while back for a contract to do a water master plan. So that should be completed by the end of the year, they're all tied together. They all affect each other. So we're looking to have that done by the end of the year. And if there's specific treatment questions, like flocculant and that sort of stuff.
And then there's also wastewater or stormwater. So where are we at on stormwater? I don't really want to ask that question, but
it's its own unique challenge at this point. That's I'll leave it at that if we want to have more discussions later.
David, you want to add anything?
Not unless you have specific questions. If you want more, if you have anything specific to the treatment plan.
What I'd like to know is, what is it going to take to finish the overall comprehensive master plan, and where is this taking us, and what can the citizens expect as far as cost, timing, services?
So David Bruchetta, I think what we're trying to do is over the next 4 years, we're trying to look at a comprehensive plan. You know, Danny mentioned that the assessment that we did specific to the treatment plant, that is what we looked at in early 2012. But when you look at the sewer as a whole, I mean, you have to look at everything. So you start with the collection side of it, you look at the treatment, and then getting rid of it. And, you know, we can have discussions down the road about separate utilities or putting them all together. I mean, that's all going to come, but we want to look at it from a holistic view. And so we've focused in on treatment specifically right now because, you know, that's where we've had a lot of infrastructure failures. In fact, you know, specific, and I mean, it's a good chance to give kudos to the staff because on Thanksgiving, you know, we actually had a pretty significant failure at the treatment plant on Thanksgiving. So we had our sewer crews out there, we had the mechanics, we had a whole list of people, including streets, and, you know, we were out there trying to solve the problem for a good 8 hours, and just, you know, aging infrastructure.
What is your thought on, as conservation reduces the amount of inflows to the plant, and as we replace infrastructure and we reduce infiltration, how does that affect the amount of water that we have for growth management going forward?
You know, they're all interrelated, and that ties right into water and some of the discussions that we're having with the water side of it. And so we want to be able to link those together. So again, it's that idea of a holistic view. So they are related because when you know, especially where some of the regulations are going, there's going to be changes in our regulations that come through NDEP that could have a direct impact to that. And we're not going to have those answers for the next 3 to 5 years, but it's going to come out of this drought forum. So that's going to be one of the specific recommendations that are tied into it, but that's going to have an implication direct to water. So we're not going to have those answers for another couple of years.
I will just add real quick one thing. We are looking at a lot of those from the when we have those lowered inflows, it almost helps our projections because we've lessened the amount of infiltration that's coming in, or in a storm, how much water we have coming in. So it kind of makes it a little bit more steady as we go forward and project with growth, as opposed to trying to track growth, infiltration, and changing efficiencies. As those things start to settle out, that'll help our planning for the future.
My next question is on page 27, and that's just an update on the Eagle Creek Bridge.
I sent you an update, I think, yesterday via email, and that's actually changed a little bit since then. You know, we're pretty much on schedule to have that project completed by the end of the year. I think in the email I sent you, we were expecting to have the bridge actually delivered on site today. After I sent that email, I found out that now it's Tuesday. But nonetheless, the bridge abutments are in place. You know, the concrete stem walls, everything is in place, just waiting for the bridge to arrive and be set on there.
And can you back up just for a moment and explain to everybody that where the bridge is located? Sure. And which trails it connects?
You bet. The bridge is located on Eagle Valley Creek, which enters into the Carson River just south of the Empire Golf Course. It actually separates the Empire Golf Course property from what we call the Vidler property, about 39 acres of open space that was donated to the city from the Vidler Water Company, which is immediately adjacent to Riverview Park. That has represented a significant gap in our trail system crossing Eagle Creek. The new bridge is going to allow us to will allow the public, the users, to basically access a trail at Morgan Mill, the Morgan Mill site, walk all the way alongside the river just east of the golf course, cross over Eagle Valley Creek into the Vidler property and down to the Riverview property, and basically catch the Mexican Ditch Trail all the way to the Carson River Road. So that one little gap that we're filling with that bridge is actually going to put together about a network of about 9 miles of trail, when you consider that you can also access that trail, the same trail, the Mexican Ditch Trail, all the way to the Linear Park Trail, almost to downtown to Governor's Field.
And the current bridge is?
Well,
plank.
The current bridge is a plank, yeah.
Which, yeah.
Pardon me?
I've walked on that plank a lot, man.
Yeah, which is fun when you're carrying your bike.
It's not an authorized bridge.
And the money for this bridge is all coming from grant funds.
The money is all coming from the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. And you had asked a question if the delay in completing this project was by any chance jeopardizing the grant, and no, it's not. We're, compared to other projects across state, we're well ahead of schedule, so we're fine.
And Lee, my next question is for you on page 29, 5.1I. Plan for a diversity of ready-to-build sites with sufficient support infrastructure and services needed to meet demand of growing and targeted industries. And NNDA is actually working on this now, so I assume that we can coordinate with them on their certified sites program?
Yeah, thank you. And when you mention that should be noted on there, because I believe we actually have one that's been named a certified site in the Carson City industrial area, so that is an accomplishment towards that.
Right, 46 acres on the east side of the airport.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So I just want to get that on the record, that is something that we can use an outside agency really to help us with our master planning. Page 33, 5.9A, existing redevelopment area boundaries should be reviewed periodically and expanded to support the redevelopment objectives of the master plan. My question is, should we be thinking about the possibility of extending redevelopment area 1 out Williams Street, Highway 50? So I don't know that if you have any thoughts on that right now, but there's going to be pros and cons to either creating a new redevelopment area or expanding the existing redevelopment area as opposed to maybe another method of doing this. But I do think that it's critical that our commercial corridors be in some sort of a district where we have the ability or some options for redevelopment. So I just want to put that idea on the table now, especially before we start construction on any infrastructure corridor improvements out there, that we should be looking at that, especially when you look at current assessed values. If we expanded the redevelopment area today out Highway 50, we're setting the bar fairly low on assessed value at the bottom of an upward curve, so it would generate money pretty quickly, and there'd be quite a bit of redevelopment funds available for infrastructure improvements on that corridor. So I just want to throw that out there so we can start having that conversation. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
We'll note it.
School district on that one, too.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that takes a lot of other money from other projects that we might want to do.
That's the issue to talk about. Okay.
That's it.
Jim, go. Sorry. Supervisor Sheriff, I'm sorry.
On page 31, the 5.5D about the development, the airport commercial use out there. And I know we talked about a lot of other things. What I bring tying this together is there anything in here, or did I miss it, that is tied to the community center and how we can assist them? They're a big attraction here in Carson City, much more than any other venue or business. I mean, we had 6,000 people come through for Mary Poppins. How are we tying this to the overall master plan, the community center?
That would fall under 5.4C, I think, right above that. And if you wanted to pursue that, support arts organizations, and related cultural institutions. So, I mean, I think things like that and expanding are something that, per the master plan, could be a future direction to go.
Thank you.
Jim, did you finish?
Yes.
Okay. All right, other board comments? Public, anybody? I don't see any. Okay, motions in order, go. If you would, try a motion.
I move to accept the Carson City Master Plan Annual Report for consideration in setting city goals and work programs for 2016 to include suggestions that were made today.
So Can I understand on
Microphone.
discussion?
Microphone.
Oh, sorry, I thought I hit it. Not to include Brad's comment to expand redevelopment area number 1, right? We're not including that in this motion.
I didn't make a recommendation to do that. I said I'd like to start the conversation.
Okay, well, because she just added in the motion as discussed today, so I just want to be clear, it doesn't include that. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, other discussion on the motion? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried unanimous. Okay, we're going to take up the League of Cities issue, then we're going to take a break. So, Mr. City Manager, you want to talk to us about League of Cities?
We are. We're going to bring up Michael Slaga again, as well as Wes Henderson from the League of Cities.
Again, for the record, Michael Saloga, Business Development Manager, and our good friend Wes Henderson from the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities. What we're asking for your approval here today is to approve rejoining the Nevada League of Cities. It's interesting that as part of Lee's presentation that he put up a demographic chart of where our population is going in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years plus. One of the things that we are as a community is we have rural foundation here that's been going on for decades, and now we are transitioning to more of an urban setting. And a big part of that is the number of population being above 50,000. And so what we're seeing in that sense is we have an opportunity with the league to be able to collaborate, connect with our compatriots in places like Reno, Sparks, Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, et cetera, City of Elko. I was actually at the last conference. It was here in October, and I represented Carson City. And I want to thank in public here Wes for his generosity in allowing me to attend the conference, even though we technically weren't members at the time. I had a chance to attend a couple of very interesting sessions. One in particular was one about being more friendly, essentially, with businesses, and we focused a lot on the whole business license process. I got a chance to make a connection with the Deputy Director of Planning from Las Vegas, asked a lot of detailed questions about their relationship with the Secretary of State's office and how they are basically separating themselves and keeping a lot of local control, why they did it, why they made those kinds of decisions, because we will be going down that path here when the issue of automating our business license process at some point in the future will occur. I also attended another one that was much more broad in that sense, and that was the impact of drought. The state engineer was there on the panel, as well as one of the senior folks with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, talking about the things that they were doing at Lake Mead and the amount of money that they were spending to ensure their water supplies. Also, there were folks from rural Nevada that were also on that panel. So we're at a crossroads as far as our organization, as far as the community is concerned, that we still have solid feet as a rural community, and yet we have a lot of urban issues that are starting to come along. So from that standpoint, I've got, I think, just one more thing that I did want to mention here. The city manager also did distribute an article a couple of weeks ago called "The Oldest Divide," and it was published in the City Journal by Victor Davis Hanson. This talks about how our nation is not just split by blue and red state or 1%ers versus everybody else. The real crucial issue here across the country is urban versus rural, and we stand at a unique place there, and the league will give us the opportunity to not only provide mentorship to some of the rural communities, but also to learn from the larger cities that are in our state. So with that, I'll let Wes have a few comments, and then it'll be open for any questions.
Why don't you, Wes, Michael, the proposal is to join now. Is there a reason why? I know you're bringing us back because we asked to have it brought back. Mm-hmm. But is there a reason to join now, or should it be picked up the next fiscal year or the coming fiscal year?
At this point, it could be either one. It's really your choice at this point.
Is there something coming up, Wes, you answered this when you get, is there something coming up between now and July 1 that we might want to be involved in, or should this wait until the next budget cycle maybe picks it up or doesn't pick it up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the Board of Supervisors. For the record, Wes Henderson with Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities. The one thing I could see would be the value of go ahead and joining now is that the first 6 months of next year is really going to be critical in formulating our legislative policy and our BDRs for the 2017 session. As you know, we have to have those submitted by September 1st. So those conversations will be starting in January. In fact, we're going to be having a workshop down in Las Vegas on January 11th. And that's going to be one of the topics that we talk about is our legislative strategies and our priorities for the 2017 session. One of the things that we did at the annual membership meeting, which is held in conjunction with our conference, is I am a firm believer that the League of Cities represents one Nevada, and all of our members, urban, rural, large and small, are equally important. That being said, we have to realize that there are differences between the different types of members that we have. So we recommended, and our board of directors approved, the formation of caucuses based upon our at-large members for our executive committee, which is large cities, small cities, large towns, and smaller towns and GIDs. So the board has formed these caucuses, and they have allotted one of the league's 5 BDRs to each of the caucuses, with the caveat, of course, that the BDR has to be approved by the entire board. So that way, the large cities, may have a unique problem and they want to use a BDR for. Cities the size of Carson City and smaller, even larger towns might have a unique problem that the large cities don't have or the GIZs don't have. So they now have a BDR that they can recommend to the board for adoption. So that, I think, would be the impetus to get you on board now. However, if it's the board's pleasure to wait until July, we certainly welcome you with open arms. And at the same time, we could, make you honorary members for now until then, and you could. We would like you to participate as well, even though, of course, you would be non-voting at that point.
Understood. Okay. Board members, Karen.
I guess from a budget standpoint, my question would be, is this in addition to the walkers dealing with our legislative issues or instead of?
Well, I think it'd be good to have a complete discussion on not only our advocacy organizations, NACO, the League of Cities, but also the lobbyists that the city currently contracts. And we have not only Walker and Associates here at the state level, but we also have federal lobbyists. And I would very much like to have that discussion. I would recommend, I know I've had discussions with a couple of the board members. I would like to bring that, unless you direct otherwise, as part of the budgeting, cycle. We can bring that up because I do think we need to look at all of this holistically, and where do we want advocacy, and more importantly, from the city point of view, where do we want to pay to have it? Where is it required, and what's kind of nice to have? I firmly believe that being a member of the League of Cities is important to us. I believe it's important not only from advocacy and lobbying in terms of the legislative session or the upcoming legislative session, but I think also, as I look at my departments, being able to assist in professional development of department directors and other important positions within the departments, I think it's important. We learn a lot from other cities. If you look at certainly some of the larger cities in the state, they have much more in terms of depth. They have much deeper organizations. There's a lot we can learn from how they approach the same type of issues. Yeah, we may not have the depth of it in terms of either the issue itself or the resources to deal with it, but it's a good learning experience. I think it'll really help in terms of professional development really across the board here on city staff.
Okay. I think I would support more the objective of delaying this until we have a budget discussion and look at everything, like you said, holistically to decide, what is the best answer for Carson City? Where do we get the biggest bang for the dollar that we're going to pay for? Second of all, we didn't identify on this a funding source to start this year, and also no travel expenses were projected. So when you bring it back for the budget, it should also include where do you have like 6 out of Carson City meetings per year, so that travel is also budgeted when we get ready to do this, so that if we're going to join, we would have the ability to actually attend the meetings. So I'm kind of looking that I just don't see a reason to do it now to join, but that we bring it with the budget and consider all of that as a package.
Okay. Jim, Supervisor Shirk.
Well, on the agenda item, the one thing that pops off the page is the participation in 5 additional bill drafts. It seems like that's the only line item that was in the agenda that you're going to provide, but now we're hearing discussion here that you're going to provide a learning experience to department heads, and I thought that's what we paid, that, I forget the name of the program, but we paid X amount of dollars for all the department heads to go to, what was that program called? Yeah, Lean, or whatever it was?
Well, that was basically an internal program where we had the consultant from Moss Adams who came in and actually not just trained, essentially department heads, but also representatives within each of the departments. But that was essentially for continuous process improvement. The number of things that the city manager is talking about would be overall professional development, not so much specifically in this area.
So, but when those meetings are taking place, it's just be one representative coming from Carson City, probably yourself, attending those, and then bringing it back to this. I'm kind of in the middle here of saying, well, I don't see what value you're bringing to us other than the additional 5 bill drafts, but I think we can get that by having the mayor have breakfast with PK and asking for a bill draft. I'm looking for more than just bill drafts. We're paid lobbyists. I don't think we're in desperate need of anything in this nature. I don't know how many bill drafts we had last year or the last session or the session before. I think it's more of a discussion at this point for me before I can vote in favor of this, because I just don't see, I understand what the city manager mentioned, but there's nothing in this agenda item that kind of says what that's going to do for us, this funding. So that's what I'm looking for.
I think I kind of agree with Lori on this one, that I see some value here, but I'd rather see this come back as part of the budget cycle so that we have a more clear understanding of what the impact is going to be and how we're going to pay for it. Regarding Jim's point about the 5 bill drafts, it sounds more like we're going to have really impact and input into 1 bill draft, maybe 2. Because of the way you've structured this now. So although I do see some value here, I just think that I'd rather look at the holistic view, Nick, as you said, and let's look at the whole package and decide where we need to spend the money and what our priorities are, so that we can kind of coordinate all 4 groups that we're working with, so that we see how they work together, rather than dealing with this today without really having an understanding of how they interact with the other 3.
And then just as another comment, Nick, when you bring this back as a package, would you look historically to the number of bills? Because Carson City itself can also request introduction. And so I'm also interested in how many bills has Carson City in the past itself recommended? So how much is having a bill draft worth to us, so that comes in your discussion during the budget?
Let me just weigh in at the end here. Is that, I sit on the NACO board, and I think, Michael, you hit the nail on the head that we're in the transition here because we have the blessing of being both a city and a county. And the world is changing, and one instance of that is that NACO, we have a number of rural counties who deal a lot with land issues, and we're landed out now. I mean, we've pretty well taken everything that the federal government has given us. We don't have any room to take more. We're now in a management stage where, so the land issues are important to the state, but they're not so important for Carson City. And I sense that coming up because I sit on the NACO board. But I also think that it's important, because we're the capital of the state, that we participate in both NACO and the League of Cities, because these are how we communicate with other jurisdictions around the state. This is how we become one state. And, I agree with the idea that we need to take a look, at how we spend advocacy dollars. I mean, I don't have a bit of problem with that. But I do think that in the advocacy realm, there's a certain amount that's beneficial by going to the legislature in the bill drafts. I think, there's some merit in that, but I also tend to agree with Jim that, I can go to breakfast. Jim can go to breakfast and get them too. But the bigger issue for me is the level of coordination and understanding of what's going on in the various jurisdictions, so that we can be part of this state. And I think it's important for us to be both of those. So from my standpoint, I would like to see, coming back with at least, when we do these discussions, I'd like to see what the cost is for both League and NACO, because I think that's where we should end up. Now, what that means with our outside lobbyists, I'll leave that to Nick to make a recommendation. So that's my 2 cents. Okay. Anybody, public comments? Anybody want to try a motion? Go.
I move to direct staff to include the League of Cities in the upcoming budget cycle for joining.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks. Thanks, Wes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. All right. We're going to be in recess until, a few minutes here. Call the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're now going to take up item 15. This is the District Attorney discussion regarding the policies and procedure for the city's boards, committees, and commissions. Mr. DA, Mr. Woodbury, you want to take us through this?
Sure. We're bringing back to you some language that was based on the discussion that we had at the meeting earlier this year. So your packet includes a clean version and a red line version with the changes. So I don't know if you prefer that I walk you through the changes we've discussed, or if you just want to open it up for discussion on.
Why don't you walk us through the changes so people know what's going on here?
Sure. This first slide is, there were some changes made that are non-substantive, just sort of grammatical and typographical, and some stylistic changes. So I don't have the non-substantive changes reflected in this PowerPoint. They are reflected in the red line version of that's in your packet, but this is just intended to address the substantive changes. This first recommended change was raised by Supervisor Bonkowski. It simply is an express indication that an incumbent on a board, commission, or committee is eligible, may reapply if that member is eligible to do so based on term limits or a change in circumstance or anything else. So that's a pretty simple change. This, in conjunction with that, is just a removal of some language that, based on that change, made this provision duplicative. Just clarifies that an incumbent may reapply. This change was raised by Supervisor Aboud. It clarifies that all applicants must actually file an application to be eligible for reappointment. An incumbent can't simply indicate to the city manager, for example, that he or she wishes to be reappointed. It has to be accompanied by an application. This is the contract provision. The existing language in the policy was more broad, is very broad, and it could be interpreted to indicate that any person who had a contract with the city was not eligible to serve on any board or commission at all, even if the contract was not within the purview of that board or commission. This clarifies and makes it consistent with our interpretation of state law that as long as the person is applying to be a member of a board, committee, or commission that doesn't have purview over that contract, that person would be eligible to serve on that board.
Question, Jason.
Sure.
Suppose after appointment, they have a contract for goods or services with the city. How does that apply, or does it apply after appointment?
That's a fair question. This only specifically concerns the time of the appointment and the contracts in existence at that point in time. That certainly would raise a conflict of issue or conflict of interest issue if a contract were to arise following that, and that there certainly needs to be a way to address that. That wouldn't necessarily fall under this, though.
Well, if I'm reading who serves on boards and commissions and so forth, I believe there could be possibly members of boards and commissions who are serving who have contracts with the city for goods or services. So maybe that's something we should look at.
No, there certainly are. There certainly are members of boards and commissions existing that do have contracts with the city. To my knowledge, there is no member serving that has a contract with the city over which that particular committee has some sort of authority or influence or anything like that, but we would certainly monitor that.
Jason, wouldn't that fall under disclosure anyway?
It does, and that the Nevada ethics and government law would require disclosure of such a situation. Depending on the nature of the contract and things like that, it might require abstention or full recusal, depending on the circumstances. But yes, it would definitely require disclosure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're just having shouldn't have. The language that has authority over the contract, explain what that's all about.
Well, it's intended to be somewhat comprehensive in the sense that some of these boards don't have the authority to legislate necessarily, but to the extent that they are advisory boards to a higher board that does have the authority to legislate, it's intended to capture that, so just that they have some authority over the board, and we could change that word authority to something like influence or, yeah, okay. That's what it's intended to capture. This is in regards to the discussion about the city manager's advance review of the qualifications of an applicant. It was the board's desire to set up a mechanism by which to have that reviewed in advance, so you don't bring folks in here who are hearing for the first time that they may not be eligible for the position for which they've applied. This was the aspirational goal raised by Supervisor Aboud about trying to ensure that all the information is submitted timely. It was not, it's not set forth as an absolute in terms of there will be no untimely material considered. We made that an aspirational goal based on the discussion of the board, that it's important to try to make sure we have all the timely information, but if for some reason we get late information, you can still consider it.
Just to clarify, though, they can't file an application late. It's just additional information.
That's correct.
So if you file late, you're out.
That's correct. Okay. This is term limits, and I know that there's at least one staff member who wanted to chime in on this. The term limits are set forth as except as otherwise provided by law. The term limits are generally going to be 12 years. It could, in theory, end up being longer than 12 years if somebody was appointed mid-term to replace somebody else or something along those lines. But pretty generally, you're going to be looking at a 12-year term limit for boards and commissions under the way that this is phrased, unless there is a specific exemption in the statute or the ordinance or the resolution carved out.
Just a point of clarification on this one. Their 12 years starts when? So remember, that was a discussion point that we were having, that we've had members that may already have served 10 or 12 years. When did the 12-year clock start? So the person can actually be on 24 years?
Well, no, this is not going to restart anybody's clock. The pre-existing policy from September of 2012 would remain in effect, and this change would be effective going forward, but it wouldn't have any retroactive application and make somebody exempt from the pre-existing policy. So
the 12-year clock started in September of 2012?
Right.
Okay.
This is the multiple appointment issue that no non-elected person is eligible to apply or to serve on more than one board, committee, or commission at any one time. That applies except when an individual member of this board has the authority to appoint the person at issue. For instance, with the Charter Review Committee, if you wanted to select somebody who was already serving on another board, you have the authority to do this. This doesn't prevent you from doing that, but you could not appoint somebody to, say, the Parks and Rec Commission and the Planning Commission at the same time.
So just to clarify, we could have somebody that sits on, say, Parks and Rec, but also sits on the Charter Review Committee and on the Utility Financial Oversight Committee, because those are specific appointments.
Yes. This change was not actually discussed at the previous meeting, and it was a bit of an oversight on my part, but in discussion with the former counsel for the Ethics Commission, we looked at this, and the existing language is not entirely consistent with the Nevada Ethics and Government Law. What the existing language indicates is that if a person has a conflict of interest, they must abstain and they must recuse themselves. That is not always the case. the state law actually governs and says a conflict of interest must be disclosed, and sometimes that will result in a required abstention or a required recusal, but that is not always the case. So what this is intended to do is to reference the state law and require compliance with that state law in regard to abstention and recusal. This is a change in the lobbying section. It's intended to, the existing language was not entirely consistent with the policy on lobbying, the legislative policy adopted by this board in January. So this goes back and references that legislative lobbying resolution that was passed by this board as being operative on the members of the boards and commissions. This was not necessarily recommended. It was this was just me going back and listening to the discussion of the board. So there's nothing certainly wrong with the existing language, and I wasn't necessarily directed to make a change to that language, but this does reflect the objectives that were expressed in terms of meeting time and location, so that alternative change, and again, I don't express this as a recommended change or anything, but this does identify the things that were identified by board members as important to them in terms of that. This recommended change was introduced by Supervisor Bonkowski. It is simply intended to indicate that if the chair or vice chair of a board or commission wants to come to present with staff to this board, that nothing would prevent them from doing that. Technically, they could designate a different member other than the chair or vice chair to do that if they wanted to, but in the normal course, it'll be the chair or vice chair doing that. One item, one subject that you asked me to come back and propose some alternatives about was the issue of subcommittees. So this is the first alternative. The existing policy is silent on subcommittees, and that is one alternative to simply allow it to remain silent on that. Alternative 2 is unless specifically authorized by law, no board, committee, or commission may create a subcommittee. Option 3 is to allow for the creation of subcommittees by boards, commissions, and committees. And the fourth alternative is to allow this board on a case-by-case basis to determine whether a subcommittee would be useful for an existing board, committee, or subcommittee. So those are the four alternatives that we identified.
Jason, having just dealt with this with the Cultural Commission, it seems to me too much of a delay in progress if you have to wait for a board decision on a subcommittee. And there are many times, and this being one of them, where a subcommittee needs to be set up to go through some specifics on documents and things of that nature to bring back to the full committee. And it's much more expeditious to allow them. So alternative 3, I think, is a good idea for purposes related to their purview.
Right. And specifically in regard to the Cultural Commission is authorized under its establishing ordinance to create a subcommittee. So it is one of those that exercise that power in doing so.
What other committees have that same authority?
I don't know. I don't recall specifically seeing that with regard to any other committee except the Cultural Commission. But don't hold me to that, please, because I just don't remember seeing it. I wasn't necessarily exactly looking for that.
How often has the idea of a subcommittee ever came up?
It comes up from time to time, yeah. And the reason why we think it's an important issue is the creation of a subcommittee, it's still creating a public body for open meeting law purposes. So it's something that our office needs to staff. It's something where minutes need to be kept. So it's the same as any other board or commission or committee.
So I know that on the Parks and Rec, we had a joint meeting with Open Space, and there's some grant applications that we needed to get ready to prepare for. So we had cross-committee subcommittee. So we took 3 from each of them to create something. But what I'm wondering is, because I want to make sure that none of them are created and then we violate the open meeting law because there is no staffing minutes and avenues taken. So should this be, if we were looking at this alternative 3, so we don't slow the progress down, but should there be something that indicates there must be a notification, there must some manner to ensure we don't violate the open meeting law? Because I don't want to see a huge proliferation either, and then you can't staff them because they're just, yay, you just gave me the authority to do this. So they start causing us a different problem. So maybe we add related to their purview and upon approval of the city manager, something to say that we can staff it and do the open meeting law. Something, and maybe that's just up for discussion, is what can we add to ensure that we're not going to set the committees up for failure?
You know, alternative 3 says that they cannot create a subcommittee unless we approve it, though, so we control that.
I just think we need one little extra catch in there somehow to make sure we're not violating open meeting law, and that we have the resource to actually create
Okay,
the subcommittee.
I'm looking at the actual language in the red line on page 43, and I don't see that language.
I'm on page 68 of the...
Oh, I have that as alternative 2, I'm sorry. I'm looking at alternative 3, which would be, except as specifically authorized by law, no board, committee, or commission may create a subcommittee unless...
the way this is...
I see.
We're looking at the one on the screen. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one we're
This is the one we're talking about.
Right, okay. So I think if we use this other one, that they can't create it unless we approve it, then that solves the problem, because we can still create them when they're necessary.
That causes the time problem.
But it puts it on a board agenda.
Right.
We're trying to see, is there a happy medium that we can find to let the committee do their work, but
I'm okay with that.
adding city manager?
I'm okay with that. I don't know.
With approval of the city manager?
Well, I don't know if you want me to approve it, but I would like the ability on behalf of the entire staff, it would include the DA, it would certainly include the clerk recorder, to be able to provide a feasibility of support or similar language. There is an issue, and I understand there are specific purposes and requirements where a subcommittee would be necessary, but it does entail quite a bit of support in terms of not just city staff, the district attorney, the clerk recorder, to all support those subcommittees. So I think there should be some type of a...
Suppose, Mr. DA, suppose you said with the approval of the attorney assigned to represent the board or commission. Take the city manager out of it and just leave it in the hands of the DA, who can look at what the staffing is and also is versed in the open meeting law.
Yeah, we could certainly do that. I mean, yeah, that's an option.
I'm comfortable. For me, I'm comfortable with that. I think, that kind of takes Nick out of the middle, leaves us, we have a legal analysis of it, puts you in the middle a little bit. But, I don't see this as,
It'd be up to the DA to get a hold of all the city and staff and everybody else to do all that. I think it's better under the belt of the city manager.
Yeah, and I'm happy to fulfill that function. I didn't mean to imply that I was looking to push it off on the DA. I'm certainly happy to fulfill that function.
It's Mox and Nix for me. I think that, we always run into this problem because the subcommittee is subject to the open meeting law by statute. So really, you could just leave it as it is. But I think at the other end of the spectrum, I think we do need some analysis of, can we staff these things properly, whether it's the open meeting law or not? Because they are. So I'm okay either one. So whatever motion comes up on that's fine with me. But, okay, all right. I like the attorneys rather than the city manager, but that's okay. That's just me. No, I'm kidding
They
you.
like to spend money.
I'm kidding you. All right.
Okay, this next set of alternatives was raised by Supervisor Bonkowski in regard to the existing policy having a procedure by which new boards and committees and commissions could be established, but existing ones weren't necessarily reviewed or disbanded. There being no formal procedure to do that. So this first alternative sort of puts that in the lap of the city manager. And says that he takes a look at it, and if he deems any to be worthy of discussion at the board level, their continued existence, that he brings that to the board. The next one just requires the placement of an annual agenda item, and I just selected annual. It could be more frequent or less frequent than that, that it'll be a standing agenda item on some meeting before the board to discuss the continuing existence of those committees and commissions. I was looking through this and researching this, and one jurisdiction actually has a committee on committees who performs that function. So that would be an additional alternative that could be considered here.
Well, my thought process, and I had a discussion with the city manager to see if he was willing to take this on, but I think it's important that he review the commissions for their value and or not, and then bring it before this board. So I think, to me, that's the most viable alternative one.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I don't know that we need to have a standing item. It seems like then we're just possibly wasting our time. I think if the city manager, he's the one in the trenches, so to speak, so he can certainly bring it forward when it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think if you approve the alternative number one, I can go through an annual review and I can just either report, a negative finding to you that everything is great, we should keep it, or if there's something that I do recommend that you look at, then that'll be appropriately agendized.
The other change that we made, there were two committees identified in the appendix as existing committees which were disbanded after the policy was adopted, so we've removed those two. The other thing we've done, I don't have a slide on it, but the other thing we've done in request or in response to a request by Supervisor Bagwell was we went through and identified the statutory or ordinance or resolution that created the committee or what have you at issue. And so that's now identified in the appendix. And that's it.
Okay. We've had a lot of discussion up here at the board level. Public comment on this issue? Public comment? Okay.
For the record, Susan Pansky, Planning Manager. As you know, I'm also the liaison to the Historic Resources Commission, and I wanted to, as the district attorney alluded to, I wanted to talk about term limits a little bit as it relates to that board. Per our ordinance, it is required that people with very specific skill sets sit on that board. And just to give you an idea of what they are, I'm required to have a design professional, such as an architect with historic preservation experience. I'm required to have historic preservation experience in a building construction official, a professional in the field of historic preservation generally, a member with experience in archaeology, anthropology, or history, and then a resident of the district. So when you look at that in the context of our small city at 55,000 people, I don't have a lot of options. And so my first request, as either a part of this modification, is to see if the board would be willing to consider making an exemption for Historic Resources Commission so that I can ensure that I maintain the members that I need and they're not termed out by the 12 years. And then in addition to that, as it relates to the 2-year limit on the chairman for Historic Resources Commission plays a very important role because staff doesn't have a specific preservation planner with specific experiences in historic preservation. The chairman assists staff in working with State Historic Preservation Office and working through grants, RFPs, and things of that nature that would be, in my opinion, more than what a regular member should be required to do. And so I'd like to request also that the board consider an exemption on the term limits for the chairman for Historic Resources Commission. Thank you.
I have a question for Jason. If I understand the way it works now, there's a provision in here that says that even though we have term limits in place, if nobody applies, if we open it up for new applications and nobody applies, then the member continues to sit until there is a new applicant. So if I understand that correctly, all we need to do to comply is open it up for applications every 2 years or when somebody's rolling off. And if nobody applies, then we've complied with our obligation until the next application period?
That's correct. I mean, that's what this is intended to capture, this language, except as otherwise provided by law or specifically authorized herein. That's actually a different section that talks about what you do if you don't get any applicants and the member continues to serve. So that would be as otherwise specifically provided herein.
So wouldn't that resolve your conflict? Because you have the people can continue to serve more than 12 years unless you get a new applicant, which you would want anyway, because you want some turnover if somebody is qualified and if they apply, so you'd have the opportunity to bring new blood in, but at the same time, you're not going to end up being short anybody because we've complied with our obligations to open up the application period. So that's the way I interpret this. So if that is not the case, then let me know.
No, I think that's a fair interpretation. If you didn't have an applicant to fill the spot pursuant to that other provision, and I don't have it right here, but the appointed member would continue to serve and would not be in violation of the term limit policy.
Yeah,
would that be subject? I mean, that's a continuation of service, but I mean, is that done by board action, or does the person just continue on? I mean, I think that in order to have some certainty in the world, you got to have some kind of appointment process rather than just the continue to serve until filled.
If I could just chime in.
Yeah, chime in, that's okay.
There is such a thing as called as a holdover.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, a holdover, but I mean, a holdover still has to have some time associated with it, or because how long is the holdover? Until the next time you publish it? And when does that time come up? Because there's no term set for it, for the holdover.
Mm-hmm. So internally, you could have a process for, if you have a holdover for another year, 12 months, or...
Well, here's the language. It's members shall continue to serve after the expiration of their term until a new appointment or reappointment is made or the member resigns in writing.
So it still doesn't set a time limit?
There would be no time limit on the holdover.
So how often would you then have to reopen that position since they don't actually have a term at that point?
It doesn't necessarily mandate any particular time for opening the application process.
Once it's open, if it's not filled, wouldn't it remain open for someone to apply? Could they not apply at any time?
Well, it's sort of a logistical question, but typically not typically, always, the application period will have an ending date, so that you know how many applicants you can get. Now, if you don't have any applicants by that ending date, certainly one option would be to just extend that to a date in the future, and I would think that under most circumstances that would be what would happen.
Okay. I actually would like to address the second point that Susan brought up, and I'd like to bring that up not just for HRC. The chairmans, currently in the policy, we say they are elected at the first meeting of whatever that year is, and they can only serve 1 year. I think we should let the committees elect their chairman. I don't know why we're trying to tell the committee who their chair, that they have to change their chairmans. So I just bring that up as a discussion point, that I think that we just let the committees elect their chairman, and if it's 2 or 3 years, that's okay. If that's what that committee feels the best leader is. I'm not sure what the reasoning was to make them change their chairmanships.
If I recall right, the reasoning was to make sure that there was ample opportunity for different people to serve in positions of leadership. I mean, kind of a forced way of doing that, but that's what I thought the discussion was.
That's correct.
And Lori, also, the person would have to agree to, even being nominated as a chairman too. So it allows for rotation of leadership.
Sorry. So what I'm indicating is I've watched committees that are forced to, no one wants the chairmanship. I don't know how to be much more blunt here. And so what I see happening on some of the committees, and that maybe even I serve on, is it may be an opportunity, but they don't want it. So we're forcing someone into it. And so what you're seeing is the chair and the vice chair just keep taking turns. And so why wouldn't we just let the committee decide? Do you think that because the chairmanship is so strong, they won't ever be able to get them out of the chair? Is that what? I don't see that when I look at any of the committees that we have. Well, okay, maybe that's, and maybe there was a problem in the past, I don't know, but I really believe for the meetings to run smoothly and to have good order in the meetings, you should let the committees select their chairmen. So that's just a point I'd like to make.
Okay. How many other, I probably catching you off guard, Jason, but how many other boards and commissions are there that have specific criteria developed for the qualifications? I know the airport does in the statute, but are there others that have?
Citizens redevelopment.
There definitely are others, and I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, Mayor. More often than not, there are not those kinds of specific criteria, but there's certainly a number of them that do.
Jason, could, to address Susan's issues, which I understand, and those are viable issues, couldn't the person reapply for the position? And if there were no other applicants, automatically it would default to that reapplication process, so that within the time periods of whatever for reelection or reappointment to the Historical Commission, it falls under our parameters of anyone that wants to apply needs to reapply, number one. And number two, they could list that they have served for 12 years. However, if no other applications come forward, it's an automatic.
I would say that the language as it's drafted right now would not necessarily allow that. We could absolutely draft a provision to address that contingency if you'd like us to.
Just put that in the term limits section. It says that that they can reapply, but if they're eligible for reappointment if no one else applies. But if someone else does apply, then they're not eligible.
Which then the city manager would look in the other section that says you double check that they're eligible before they come to us. There's a cross check. Right, that's a good cross check.
So then we would need to change vacancies to be advertised as well. The language that we're proposing in that change is what prohibits this, so we would have to make a change there to say as otherwise specified.
So is the reappointment of that board member, we keep it open until someone applies? Does that go for a certain period of time? Or, I mean, if he applies, if no one applies, and he's reassigned to that board or commission, now, does he stay there for a year, 2 years, or just until someone else applies, and then that person would take the seat?
Yeah. As it's drafted here, it would be, you would be appointed to the term. And then at the end of that term is when it would be reopened for applications. That's right.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with both of those. I just want to make sure that I'm not kicking people off of the Historic Resources Commission board that are eligible and not having the opportunity to replace them. So that's good. But I would still say that related to the chairman, I'd hope that we could still discuss that because in addition, and Lee had reminded me, they have approval authority at the administrative level as well. So I would still like to ask that you consider an exemption for the chairman for that.
And it's not, we haven't discussed it, but just so the board knows, that this is the language. Unless otherwise provided by law, ordinance, or resolution, a member may only serve as chairperson for 2 consecutive years. A member who served as chairperson will qualify to be nominated for chairperson provided that 2 or more years have passed since the member last served as chairperson.
Sorry, didn't stay on. Charter Review Committee. I think there's more committees than just HRC where we need the expertise of our chairmans. And I just really think we ought to let the boards decide who's their best leader instead of us forcing who the best leader is. The Utility Oversight Committee, you've got several of them. You might want to change.
I don't know. It might work that we have an aspirational goal instead of on terms rather than a set 2-year period.
I like that.
I don't know. I mean, that way you could say that they're going to do it, but it's aspirational that the chair rotate, but that the authority rests with the committee.
I like that. That works.
I can live with that too.
I can live with that. That way the committee,
All right.
no one wants to serve and have a good one.
That's why you sit in the middle chair.
Thank you for your consideration.
I don't know. All right. Let's take up the alternative stuff here, and then we'll see where we go on that, because I think we need emotions on those. So,
I didn't have a chance, but can I just ask?
I'm sorry,
No, I just have a
go, Jim. I'm sorry.
question. I didn't get it out fast enough, but on page 24 where it says member, 2 asterisks after it, all of those listed there, can you give me a brief explanation as to what the term member means?
Right. Those are boards, commissions, and committees that this body appoints a member of, but doesn't necessarily appoint the majority of the members. It's not a body of this board. It is just a body that, for one reason or another, you appoint a member or multiple members to.
And that the DA doesn't have anybody sit on these, right, as you do on other boards and commissions, correct?
Let me make sure of that. No, we do not. And there are a few, like TRPA has its own council provided by the state of Nevada. And we don't staff these, no.
I know it was heavy discussion. I'm turning to the page as I'm talking. There's been an ongoing discussion on page 15. Should they be televised if feasible, location, and so forth? I mean, I brought this up numerous times. I'm willing to accept this as it is, but I would still recommend, we have, it should, I think, be televised. I mean, if we're going to allow the membership of these boards and committees to meet at a time reasonable for their lifestyle or work or whatever, I get that. I'll accept that. But to say televise if feasible, people really rely on accessibility. And if we're going to be open and transparent, this room has televisions. It can be accessed 24 hours a day, and this is where all meetings of boards and commissions should be taking place. I know I may not gain any support in this effort, but I think as a sitting elected officials, I think all of us should stand behind this and make sure that these meetings are held here so they're televised and open to the public. That's my recommendation, but as is right now, I know I have to accept it the way it is, and I'm comfortable with that, but I would hope other members would look at it as well. Oh, I'm sorry, one more other thing. I do want to say thank you for coming out publicly and clearing up ward voting as you did, and because that was, that article that you put out was very helpful in clarifying that, and thank you for that.
I just have a question in general. Do we have any of our meetings that actually, they may not be directly televised, but then they're YouTubed immediately where people can watch them? So I just want to make sure every one of them are actually getting recorded digitally and put where people can watch them later.
I can say unequivocally, every committee that I have staff oversight of meets in the Sierra Room, and they are televised. We did make that change per Supervisor Shirk's request. There are a couple that fall out of that purview. V&T Commission, the Library Commission, I've recommended to them, and I've made the room available. But we have, I think I know, not that I think. So everything that I do have staff purview of is meeting in here, and they are televised.
That is correct, and I appreciate that. I didn't want to bring up any names. I was just leaving it.
Well, and so we're clear that you don't have jurisdiction over the other agencies. Like, you can't have TRPA come down here and say you're going to meet here. I mean,
that's correct.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's. We ready, Jim? Okay. Let's, because I think we got to take up the alternatives, and then we'll take it on the overall motion.
Public comment.
Public comment. I'm sorry. Yep. Morris, come on up. I apologize. Go.
Good morning. Morris White for the record. A couple of questions. The AB 377 Implementation Committee in regards to preserving the Nevada State Prison. I notice it's not on any of the lists that was provided. I wonder if it should be, as Carson City supplies a member to that committee.
I don't think we do any, correct me if I'm wrong, Morris, but I don't think, we did we don't apply or set one to the Nevada State, to the Preservation Society. We did to the Analysis Committee that submitted its report, but I don't know if that committee still stays in existence, does it?
The study committee is finished. That was AB 356. AB 377 Implementation Committee is operating. Mike Drews does attend those meetings under the authority of yourself.
And that one still exists then?
Yes, it's operating now and will continue into the future.
Well, I think we do appoint it.
Yes.
We need to add that.
I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you. In regards to the Airport Authority, the appointments to the Airport Authority stand as you serve for 4 years, then you must sit out for 4 years before you can serve again. I'm wondering how the 12-year term limits apply to that. Would it be an entire 12 years, or does that start over every time you get reappointed?
The Airport Authority is created by that special legislation, so there's nothing in the policy that could or is intended to supersede that state law. So the Airport Authority will continue to operate as it has, regardless of what's in this policy. This policy doesn't supersede state law, and there's that carve out that says except is specifically provided by law. So that wouldn't have any impact.
One final thing, page 8 of the packet would be page 3 of the clean copy. At the bottom of the page there, where in the last paragraph, where it talks about if you're not able to seat a member, it says then individual members of the Board of Supervisors may privately solicit to get members appointed. Is that to say that prior to failing to appoint a member that Board of Supervisors should not be privately soliciting members to apply to the different boards, committees, and commissions?
I did not, this is language in the existing policy. I would say it wouldn't, I would not interpret it that way.
Okay.
That the private solicitation of somebody to apply would be a violation of this policy even during the initial application period. I think they're free to do that.
Thank you. That's all.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Anybody else? I don't see any. So let me see here.
Page 39.
Page 39.
The alternative language on the bottom of the page.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to page, is there, where's the one that's on the,
Page 64.
is that the first one, 64? Okay, let's take up, see where we're going to go on. That alternative, 64, looks like we could do that. Where's the,
The existing is on the left, the proposed is on the right.
yeah, but I mean, but that's part of the, I don't know if there's an alternative on that one.
No, we would be striking the existing on the left and replacing it with the
So just accept
alternative
the
on the
alternative.
right.
Just accept the alternative.
Okay. Let's take up, let's take that issue up then. Let's go on page 64 of the handout here. This is meeting location and time. Somebody want to make a motion on that? That we either adopt or don't adopt or whatever we want to do.
I would move to adopt the alternative language and strike the existing language.
Regarding meeting location and time. Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's go to the one on subcommittees. I think we're,
I'll do that one if you want.
go ahead and do that one.
Okay, let's see if I can make a motion. I'd like to do on the subcommittees, I move to have it read, boards, committees, and commissions are authorized to create subcommittees for purposes related to their purview with the approval of the city manager.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay. 4 to 1. Okay.
Mayor, page 65, do you have to have anything on it?
65. That's what we just did. Oh.
That's just,
And it's all at once.
That'll be the main motion, right?
on the main motion, that'll be adopted. So we'll just, I think we're just trying to do the alternative ones now, and then we'll, on the recommended change, we'll pick all those up on a master motion, I think, and then we'll see how that goes. But all right, 71.
Okay, I move that at least annually, the city manager shall evaluate the usefulness and necessity of each board, committee, and commission not required by state or federal law. If the city manager determines that one or more is no longer useful or necessary, the city manager shall place an item on an agenda for a Board of Supervisors meeting to consider elimination of the boards, committees, or commissions at issue.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now,
I think that was it.
we want to take up the issue of term limits and chairmanship. But I think we can do that as part of the master motion, I think. If we do a master motion, then we make those changes. You understand what I'm saying, Woody? Okay, so let's try this. Let's see if somebody can make a motion that we adopt the recommended changes with the alternatives we just approved, with the change to the chairmanship and the change to the which will include a provision on an aspirational goal, and to change that to the term limit where there's an application where the incumbent applies and there's no other application, that the incumbent is entitled to go beyond the 12 years, beyond the term limit. Everybody okay? Okay, somebody want to make a motion to that effect?
I can do that. I move to direct staff to revise policies and procedures for the city's boards, committees, and commissions, including the alternatives approved during our discussion and changes to our aspirational goals and to term limits as discussed during this agenda item today, and specifically relating back to the comments just made by the mayor regarding those items.
Second. That worked.
Okay.
That's tough.
Tough.
That's so hard.
All right. That's a good motion. Yeah. What's it called? Squishy.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That was squishy.
But you got it, right?
You got it.
As long as we
You got it. He's smiling. Okay, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay. We'll see. I mean, send it back out. I mean, it's done, but final version, make sure we get it, and if there's a problem, we'll bring it back, okay?
I just want to thank you for doing such a good job of lining that out.
Yep. Okay. Susan, can I chat with you before you leave? Just, thanks. Okay. All right. Let's take up Board of Supervisors non-action items. Anybody got anything on non-action items? Supervisor, sure. Go, Jim.
Just a couple of quick things. At the last board meeting, I made a suggestion the city should take a citizens survey. And hopefully that's indication is there may be something in the works on that, so I'm looking forward to that. I do want to update, I'm sure everyone on the board knows this, but the public in general, the Charter Review Committee has finally received the appointments from our Senator of Larry Messina and by our Assembly person, Ben Steele. So happy to see that's finally taken place. Recently, I attended the joint meeting held by the Regional Transportation Commission and the Redevelopment Authority, where staff presented the 90% drawings for the downtown corridors. There were a number of questions by board members of each committee that were asked at the meeting, and staff said they would get back to that particular board member with a response to that question. And since it was a public meeting, and I confirmed with the DA before this, whatever was answers were given to those specific board members to those specific questions that were asked in public should be open for the public viewing as well. So in relationship to the board meeting that was held, any questions that was asked of staff and staff got back to that board member by email, we the board members and the public should have access to those reasonable answers that were given to all board members at the meeting, and any communications related to that question from that board member back to staff that staff then replied again, that should all be part of the minutes of the meetings or published publicly so we can all see the answers that were given, not just the particular board member who asked the question because it was at a public meeting. Also, today when Eric was giving his presentation, I did ask if a couple of questions about the new website, which I think is fantastic. But I still believe the ID department should oversee hashtag Carson Proud, not the Public Works Director. That's, again, my opinion. Recently, I have met with city staff regarding the noise ordinance, RV parking, and presently the staff gave us time with another board member to look at construction contracts. And I want to express my thanks to staff for the willingness to meet and discuss these issues and others. They give up a lot of their time, and I do appreciate it. Throughout each undertaking, I was encouraged to have staff invite another board member to these meetings, and I think and I know we had no quorum because there's only 2 board members, but I do appreciate the fact that we have other opportunities to attend meetings like this, and all board members should be given notice of when these are taking place. As I brought up again last meeting, a waste management contract is up in 2019. However, just as Sparks and Reno had called rescheduling of their contracts with waste management, so should Carson City. If we're moving forward in the 21st century, doing the downtown corridor, spending $10 million, we can look at and how we can help our community, our next generation, our next 30, 40, 50 next generations by starting recycling, just as Carson should follow what Sparks and Reno has done, so can we. Waiting until 2019, we're putting off recycling of any matters till 2021. It'll take years to put into the process, and I think that's wrong. I think if some board member could send a message to staff that they'd like to meet and discuss this, we could do this just as we did the noise, the RV, and contracts, and that would be most beneficial to all of our communities, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay. Public comment, concluding public. Anybody? Anybody? I don't see any. Are we ready to adjourn?
Just tell everyone to enjoy the Christmas lighting tomorrow.
Oh, the Christmas lighting tomorrow night.
Yes.
We should go enjoy that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's a whole lot going on to the state tree, the city tree, and then there's a lot going on Telegraph and Telegraph Square. And where else?
And also at the First Presbyterian Church, bowls will be served, and there's all kinds of soup, wonderful soup, chilies, all sorts of things being served.
What happened to your voice?
It's gone, it left.
Been eating out
This is my
bowls.
altar voice.
Okay, all right. Anything further? All right. We're going to have a long meeting on the 17th, so I'll be on vacation. No, unless there's
Oh, no.
unless there's objection, we're adjourned.